Is 11:30, and we are going to be talking about Go Green, an update on the USA Spay Neuter Directory with Brianna Lovell, who is the Administrative Director at the United Spay Alliance. You may know Bree from the management and support she provides to the Community Cats podcast. She is our hospitality cat. She's also the Administrative Director for United Spay Alliance. As the Administrative Director, she oversees the day-to-day operations of the organization, including the nationwide Spay Neuter Directory, the State Leader Network, and our Go Green campaign. Bree also serves on the board of directors for the Community Cat Alliance in Winchester, Virginia. She previously worked for Alley Cat Allies, where she held various management roles in outreach programs and events, and led the charge for their flagship National Feral Cat Day and Global Cat Day campaigns. Bree holds a Master's of Public Administration degree from West Virginia University, and she currently lives in Maryland with her husband and their senior rescues. All right, Bree, I'm going to send it over to you.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you everyone for tuning in. It's so great to have so many folks here, and to have such a good conversation going so far this weekend has been fantastic. So I feel like this is a really great session to follow the conversation that we were having this morning with our state leaders. So if you're able to tune into that, you have some idea of what United Spay Alliance does, and especially, the role of our state leaders and kind of how they all work together. But if not, welcome. We're going to talk all about it. And most specifically, we're going to talk about our Go Green campaign. And so if you've been sitting during any of these breaks and you've seen a map pop up on one of those rolling slides, we're going to take a look at that map and we're going to talk about it more in depth. So welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to tell you all about what we've had happening here at United Spay Alliance. So if you've been around Community Cats podcast, you've probably heard Stacy say the tagline, we're here to help you turn your passion for cats into action. And that's like the mantra of Community Cats podcast. And if I had to put my finger on it, the mantra for United Spay Alliance is really spay neuter. It's public health for pets. And I know that this is very near and dear to Esther's heart, who founded the organization. This is our mission. This is at our core and what we're here to do. Because when you think about public health, it's all about prevention, right? And so when we put that idea of prevention in the space of our pets and the animal welfare space, then we're talking about preventing overpopulation, we're preventing future litters, of course, we're preventing overcrowded shelters, and all of the things that go along with that. And at the core is spay neuter. So that's what United Spay Alliance is, all things spay neuter. And so if you're interested, I always like to include a little agenda because I like to know what's going to be happening. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the Go Green campaign today, and then I am going to actually walk you through our online directory. We're going to take a look at the website and click around a little bit, and I'll explain more about how that map works and where we are and where we hope to go in the future. And then I do want to talk a little bit about what spay and neuter is like all around the country. And so I've asked some of our state leaders for feedback. I'm going to ask you for your feedback. And then, of course, we're going to talk about what United Spay Alliance is doing, what our task force is doing, and we're going to talk more in depth about the role of our state leaders and how all of these different things kind of dovetail together to create what we hope is a really good network of support and empowerment for folks who are out there, boots on the ground, promoting these spay-neuter services. So first and foremost, when we're talking about our Go Green campaign, we're really talking about our Spay Neuter directory. And this is a nationwide directory that we have been working on. It's really the core of what United Spay Alliance does, and it's why we were really kind of founded, is to put this list together to make it easy for folks to find help with spay and neuter services. We want to eliminate barriers. We want to make sure that folks who want to get their pets spayed and neutered actually make it all the way through the process to making the appointment and then getting that pet the help that they need before, sometimes in between, when there are too many barriers, too many challenges, people get frustrated and they give up. And so we don't want people to give up. And so we have two layers. We have our spay neuter directory, and then if that isn't enough information, then we have our state leaders there to provide a second layer of support. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation, but that's really the strategy, is that by having this like dual support system, you know, the online DIY option of search our map and see what's near you. And then if that's not enough, here's an actual person or an organization, a phone number that you can reach out to get those questions answered. And so our goal is that with those two things in hand, that everyone will have the help that they need to get their pet spayed and neutered. So the Go Green campaign that we keep talking about and referencing, I was joking with Stacy that we might have been more clever about it, or I might have presented a little differently if I knew it was going to become such a public thing, but really it was something that we just started using internally, you know, that language as we were going about working on this directory and seeing where we were with each of the different states. And so basically, to be considered green, there needs to be two things, and that's a spay neuter list that United Spay Alliance owns, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And we need a committed state leader. So those are the two check boxes, really. And if a state has a list and a state has a leader, then they're green. And if they don't have one or the other, then they're somewhere in between and more of a yellow kind of state. And then if they don't have either, then they're red. And so we'll take a look at the map. But that first checkbox is USA owns the list, or has a list in our possession that we update, we can, you know, make any changes to, and we can put out there on the internet. And why does this matter? Well, as we were going about our work, we were finding that there are a number of states where there just isn't any kind of collected information like it. There are organizations, there are great resources. Spay neuter is happening, but they're so busy doing all of the things that no one has the time to sit down and put together a list or keep it updated or put it on the internet, or, you know, doesn't have the technical expertise to put it on a website. You know, there's lots of layers to it. So we were finding that there were a lot of states where this information just hadn't been compiled. But then on the other hand, we know that there are states where there are fantastic leaders. We were just listening to 3 leaders in the session before this. I know there are so many more out there, leaders on our list. And then there are just organizations that are doing great work in the community, and not necessarily a USA state leader, but they're great orgs. And they are maintaining their own resource lists. And so our intent was not to duplicate their work or in any way diminish the lists or the resources that they've already built. But we have just been in situations where, you know, the things that you don't want to happen or don't expect to happen kind of take you by surprise. And so either organizations close or go defunct, websites crash, state leaders or staff, you know, come and go. And in those situations in the past, if we were reliant on the state leader to maintain their own information, and then all of a sudden something unthinkable happens and that information is no longer available, then there was just like a big hole in our directory because we were reliant on that outside organization to have the information. And so we decided strategically it made the most sense for United Spay Alliance to keep a central list, our own database of spay neuter all around the country, every single state. That way, if a state leader's website goes down, if an organization is no longer available, whatever the situation may be, we always have that list as a backup. So on the one hand, we are a resource for states that don't already have this information and don't have the tools or resources to do it on their own. And on the other hand, we are, you know, a backup, a just in case. And so hopefully it's a win-win, but either way, we are a resource and, you know, another tool in the tool belt, as it were, to promote spay and neuter services. So again, just to re-emphasize, we have 2 things to be considered green, your list and your leader. And so what does that look like? So this is where we were in end of 2022, beginning of 2023. This is kind of where we were around the country. You'll see that we do have a number of states in the green, meaning they have both of those things. We have a list and a leader. And again, that's not to say that the state leaders don't have their own list. It's just to say that United Spay Alliance hadn't sat down and built their own directory. So again, I do want to clarify that some of the states that you see not green, it's not their fault. It's United Spay Alliance needed to play catch up is what this is. So we have a number of states that are green. We have some that are yellow, which means that we have a list, but we don't have a leader. And then the stripy yellow are where we do have a leader, but we hadn't gotten to the list yet. And then the stripy green, we had a leader and no list, but we had volunteers actively researching the list. So as soon as those volunteers are done, we promised the list will be ready and the state will be green. And so this is where we were roughly a year ago. And so this is my favorite part. Ready? You ready for this? Where are we now? Boom. See all that? Look at that map, turning green. And so now we're up to 33 states that have both a list and a leader, and that does include New York City and Long Island. They have their own leader, and so New York State is separate from New York City because we were obviously, those are two distinct communities, right, and populations that you're working with in the city versus the rest of the state. So I didn't have the ability on this little map of, it's a very simplified thing I found online to like click and fill a state with a color. So just pretend that Long Island is green and the rest of New York State's yellow. And so, but then we have a lot more areas where we have the list. There's only at this point 2 states where our volunteers are working, in California and New Mexico, just those 2 states where we're working to finish those directories. And as soon as we're done a directory, then I have our volunteers, we're going back through and then we're starting to audit the information that we previously researched, because at this point it's maybe a year old. So then we go back to see what information has changed and, you know, what can we add or edit to make this list as accurate as possible. So I will say that the lists are never done, but at least we'll have all of those states covered. But we're very excited. And so this is the map you've seen in your in the slides during breaks. This is the map that Stacy has mentioned. I know how much she loves it. I love it. Sending these status map updates out is one of my favorite things to do internally as we track our progress. And so obviously our goal is to see every state turn green, and that means that we have a list and we have a leader. So let's see, I've talked about a list, but I actually want to show you what that means. So I'm going to hop back here. If you go to just unitedspayalliance.org, this is our homepage. If you find yourself here, there are a couple ways to get to our directory. You can go up to Spay Neuter and find Spay Neuter help, or you can just click on this big locate Spay Neuter button right here in our banner, and that will take you to our nationwide directory. Now, we've had a couple versions of this directory, a couple iterations as we have continued to grow and improve the way we're sharing this information. So at this point, every single state has its own landing page. And so if you were to come here and you want to find help in your home state, you would click on that. If you're trying to find help for someone else in a different area, you click on whatever state they're in. For me, in the sake of this presentation, I live in Maryland, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Maryland. And so you see we pull up the landing page here for the state of Maryland. As you can see, we're still in need of a state leader. So this is another bit of yellow on our map. If anyone's out there from Maryland thinking that they might be interested, you let me know. But it's all branded. I'll show you a couple different examples of how we change this page when we do or don't have a state leader. But for right now, we have United Spay Alliance as a placeholder here. But this is the list that I've been talking about. And this is the map that we've been working to build. And now this is a new thing. We have updated on our very first iteration when we were just trying to get the information together and get it out there. We kind of had a PDF that people could download of every single state, and it was organized by county, and it had a lot of great information. But if you were just kind of feeling overwhelmed trying to find help, it wasn't as user-friendly. But now we have everything populated into, basically it's a giant spreadsheet on the back end. And so I can just put my zip code in, and let's say I'm in like kind of the outskirts of the DC bubble, and so I don't want to go that far because it can take some time to travel with all this traffic. Let's look at 25 miles. So I input my zip code, I adjust my search radius, and I click search. And you'll see here are the resources that pop up near me. Pretty cool. And so, and you can do that wherever you are. Let's take a look at a couple other states. And so let's pretend I'm in Colorado. So here's a great example. They've been my template. This is like the first page we built out with the state leader. And so I keep showcasing Colorado just because they're the ones that I used as my guinea pig first. But you'll see here we do have a state leader. We have their logo up here. This donate button goes to our state leaders donate page. This is their social media information. Basically, we do our best to brand and promote our state leader as much as possible on these pages. If we scroll down, you'll see like this is all information that they gave us. So this is all approved by the state leader. We even give folks the option to submit photos that they want us to use or anything like that. And so you'll see this is very customizable. Basically, we have a template, but our state leaders, we encourage them to tell us what they want, what information they want reflected. The information or like the contact, like the phone number or email address that they want to share with the public. This is all there for our state leader to tell us how we should showcase them and what services they want to highlight, what contact information they want to share. It's all very customizable. So anyway, but you'll see this map does default still to Maryland, and you might be wondering why that is. And the answer is that basically your computer, your internet knows where you're located. And so the map is going to default to wherever I personally am physically located. However, if I had a zip code for Colorado and I put that in, it would go ahead and search Colorado. I don't off the top of my head know any zip codes in Colorado. However, but the same thing, you just want to search by zip code is what I find has the best results. I think you can search by city, but I just think zip code is a really easy way to find exactly what you're looking for. You can adjust how far you want that search radius to go. In different parts of the country, I know you have to travel a lot further to find resources, and especially in some of those spay-neuter deserts, as we call them. And so just depending geographically where you are, you might advise folks just to look, reset this search radius and click search, right? And then you're going to get all those results on the map. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. That's our nationwide directory. You can click on any state and find that information. Now, is this the most perfect thing ever? No. As I said, this is the second or third iteration of this map. We've been working to create these landing pages, to update the spay-neuter listing, to get this searchable map into existence and rolling it out. And so this has been a labor of love. And if you've ever been involved in a technical website related project, then I'm sure you've encountered one or two things that you weren't expecting. And it's been a learning curve, I will say, for sure. And so one of the things I do want to point out is that if you notice any of this information is inaccurate and you want to help us out, you can, on every page, should have a button to submit information. If you have something that's not already listed, you can go ahead and tell us about that. Or if you want to update information for an existing listing, you can tell us about that. So we're very keen to keep this information as updated as possible. Again, we rely on volunteers to help us do this research. And we work with our state leaders to update information as much as possible. But we are a very small team that is doing the best we can to keep this information as up to date. And so we have lots of great ideas for how we want to continue to grow and improve these directories. The type of information we want to share, we have ideas for how we're going to list things like financial assistance programs, transport programs, mobile units, things that don't maybe plot nicely on a map, but are still great to have. And so all of that is coming. But for right now, we have rolled out all of these pages for every single state. Look at that cute kitty. So this is our Washington State page, obviously. So these maps are going to continuously grow, continuously improve. That's the goal, because the spay neuter landscape we know is changing constantly, and so we're going to constantly change with it. And our goal, of course, is just to make sure as many people and pets as possible get the help that they need. So hopefully that all made sense as I walked you through a little bit of it. All right, so popping back into our presentation, I've shown you the map and talked a little bit about our Go Green campaign, but we have learned some things along the way as we've been talking to, obviously, our state leaders, but also networking with different organizations in different parts of the country. And so this is kind of a big conversation for us, is really what's it like out there right now? So Stacy, if you can help me out with a poll question. Our first poll question is, I'm wondering for folks out there, how long are people waiting for low-cost spay neuter appointments in your area?
All right, I'm going to launch that poll. So is it 0 to 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, 1 to 2 months, 3 to 5 months, or 6+ months? All right, interesting. All right, and I'm going to close the poll, share the results. So we have move the 10% say 0 to 2 weeks, 15% say 2 to 4 weeks, 46% say 1 to 2 months, 26% say 3 to 5 months, and then 3% say 6+ months.
Wow, okay. So that's actually better, I think, than what I was actually anticipating. We've heard, and I'll go over this here in a second, but I'm pleased to see that it's not quite as many folks in the 6+ months category. So that's at least something. I like that. All right, and then a second poll question, if you don't mind, Stacy. Everyone out there, I'm wondering, what is the average cost of low-cost spay neuter surgery where you are? And I am wondering specifically, let's limit it to cats. That way we're comparing like apples to apples. So if you think about surgeries for cats, what is the average cost of what we're calling low cost these days?
All right, and so we have free under $50, 50 to 100, 100 to 150, and then 150 plus. Ugh. So we have 2% free, 23% under $50, 58% 50 to 100, 14% 100 to 150, and then 2% 150 plus. So we must not have that many New Yorkers here. I can tell you that one right away. I actually am pleased with this too.
Yeah, that is, again, better than what I was anticipating. That 50 to 100, that seems like a good middle point. I know that that is still high for some folks. Again, it's all a matter of perspective, and it ranges from individual to individual what that low cost is. But this is a conversation that we're actually just having this week with our state leaders is, how do you define low cost? And it's so different in every part of the country. So it's very interesting. I appreciate your feedback for sure. All right, so speaking of our state leaders, I did poll them before this session. I sent out just a very simple question to our state leader list, and I said, what is access to spay neuter like? And I left it very open-ended for them to tell me what they thought about spay neuter in their state. And so we have a few different folks responding, and so in no particular order. This is really just how I read their emails. And so in the state of West Virginia, he said the struggle to find veterinarians is still very strong. The growth of access is still far below the growth of demand, which I think is something we can all, many of us at least, can connect with. In New York City, our state leader, this is his exact quote, was that some describe getting spay neuter appointments as harder to get than tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. And I just thought that said it all. And like Stacy referenced, I know that spay neuter resources in New York City have changed drastically. And so I know it is such a huge challenge in that part of the world right now. Pet owners are regularly encountering wait lists up to 6 months, and prices for even traditionally low-cost providers are creeping up. Meanwhile, in Vermont, many of the clinics in Vermont are fortunate to have a dedicated part-time staff veterinarians. But the cost of spay-neuter surgery for the public isn't cheap, and it's hard to lower the cost of those services. So it sounds like Vermont might have vets, but the availability of low cost is getting more challenging. Over in Arkansas, I thought this was an interesting point, that in Arkansas, as a rural state, access to low-cost spay-neuter is in large part hindered by transportation issues. And so in Northwest Arkansas, there's little wait for appointments, but nothing more than a couple weeks. Overall, Arkansas has better access than many, but that doesn't mean the process is particularly easy. So folks can get appointments, but can they get there? So this is an area where spay-neuter resources are more spread out. California is experiencing 6 months or longer wait lists. Taking animals to vets for spay-neuter is unaffordable to most, with surgeries ranging from $800 to $1,400, depending on the age and size of the animal. Whew. So yeah, be grateful for those $50 to $100 spay-neuter spay-neuter services. And California is struggling with the cost of their services. In Colorado, it seems to vary depending on what part of the state you're in. In southern Colorado, it sounds like they have a wait list in that 5-month range. And even for our state leader in the northern part of the state, they have about 2 months out for scheduling right now. In Ohio, they're seeing some improvements on the timing, and so vets are scheduling 2 to 3 weeks out, but staffing remains an issue, especially for front desk help. And I know we've talked about the vet shortage, and that's a phrase that keeps coming up throughout this conference, and we've talked about how to recruit veterinarians, and I think we've even talked about recruiting vet techs or the role of vet techs, but something I don't know that we talk enough about is all of the support staff around them. And so the front desk folks and the other office people that make that vet clinic work, and they can get just as burned out, and they play just as critical a role as anyone else. So I think that's also important to keep in the conversation as we're talking about, how we staff our vet clinics. So thank you, Ohio, for that. Over in Washington State, they have a lack of volunteers combined with a high demand for vet staff, led many clinics to close. Our demand across the state far exceeds the supply of spay-neuter appointments. And so I think at this point, you're starting to see some very common themes. And so we had leaders respond from all over. In Alabama, they said, the only advice I've had is to call animal control and to let them take the animal to the shelter, because they only have 3 low-cost clinics in the state. In Iowa, they're struggling with the vet shortage, just as so many others are. And they're needing to hire at least 1 to 2 vets right now. Our services are in such high demand. We know this is going to be an issue for many. In Mississippi, new rescue groups are popping up all the time, but the spotlight on spay-neuter has been left behind. But shout out to the Mississippi Spay and Neuter Network. They have created a page to help groups start their own spay-neuter programs. And so they are taking the lead and taking action by providing information to help more groups get involved in spay-neuter and creating more spay-neuter opportunities for folks, which is outstanding. So shout out to Mississippi SPAN. In Missouri, groups who are able to work together for transport efforts make a big difference in underserved areas. We do a subsidized program and have struggled to add new vet clinic partners to it. Clinics seem to be burnt out on no-shows. And I know we've had a few conversations, I think, in our state leader network about how to deal with no-shows. And so I know that comes up from time to time. So just a couple more for you. Spay-neuter is challenging in Wyoming. Many clinics that were involved in voucher programs have stepped back. Over in Texas, it sounds like their clinic, the animal birth control clinic, our state leader in Texas, is running between 45 to 55 surgeries, at least 4 to 5 days a week, and they're still booking into December. South of the DFW area, the needs are massive. There are few veterinarians that will cover empty shifts. but those vets may be unwilling or unable to do surgeries. And so there's, again, a vet shortage and a need in Texas and in Connecticut. Our state leader told us that the demand is high for spay neuter, so much so that low cost is no longer truly low cost, it's just less expensive. So just with those states reporting in, as you can see, there's several themes popping up time and again, from how are we staffing, where are the vets, where are the techs, where's the office support, and then also, where are just the services. And so in the face of all of that, how do we move the needle? How do we keep spay neuter at the front of the conversation? How do we help more people have access to these services? I'm so glad you asked. Well, here's what we're doing at United Spay Alliance, both with us and with our veterinary shortage task force. And I could probably give a whole presentation, and maybe next year that will be my presentation. We'll be talking all about our wet labs. But this is a newer program, a pilot program that we've rolled out to provide training opportunities for veterinarians to learn high quality, high volume spay neuter techniques from experienced surgeons. So this is an opportunity for vets to get hands-on and actually perform spay neuter, or I guess we've mostly focused on feline spays in our trainings so far. But they're actually able to get their hands on the animal and try these techniques with someone there to help guide them through how to do it. If you have been in other sessions, you might have heard just how little training vets get in vet school when it comes to spay and neuter. And certainly they're not learning the high volume techniques, the efficient techniques. And so knowing how little access they might have had to just learn this information, we're looking at providing more local training opportunities. So vets don't have to travel out of state. They can go, we try to keep them local. We try to keep them very focused. And so I think our next training is coming up in Maine in November. On November 11th, we have another training in Maine, and we're going to have 6 students and 2 teaching veterinarians. So it's a very intimate session where each student is definitely getting like that one-on-one support time. They'll each get time to learn and practice and put these techniques to use. And then the goal is that United Spay Alliance will have a template that other people in other parts of the country can roll out and utilize to provide similar trainings wherever they are. And so we're going about this kind of pilot program, and we're collating these resources and providing like the information that we've learned along the way to help anyone be able to host similar training opportunities. Because the more veterinarians who can be trained in these techniques can incorporate that much more efficiency into their everyday practice. Even if it's in private practice, just having that efficiency could help create more spay neuter appointments. And in the end, of course, we hope everyone just like falls in love with the high volume work and just like becomes a high volume veterinarian or finds an opportunity to host a clinic or join with other organizations doing the work. That's the dream. But even if it's a private practice vet who becomes a bit more efficient and then is able to offer 2 spay neuter appointments instead of just 1 in the same amount of time, we'll take that too. And so we're also working to promote and provide information on different creative approaches, shall we say, to spay neuter services. And so we're calling these our different delivery systems, working on a blog series highlighting each of these different approaches. And then we're also providing like I think this was mentioned in our state leader session, but we're doing profiles on different people who are doing these things really well. And so in addition to the overall information about that delivery system, we're also starting to reach out and profile groups that we know are doing really well, with one or the other spay neuter delivery system. And so this is something we're actively adding information to on our website and continue to grow. And if you have nominations, obviously reach out to us and let us know who you think's doing a great job, and we would love to, feature them in our upcoming publications. And also the Veterinary Shortage Task Force in particular is working on expanding reciprocity, is one of the conversations that comes up a lot. And you can learn all about this. I believe it's in the session after mine. So after we come back from lunch, you can hear all about the work that they have done, and specifically in the state of Florida. But the idea being, if we can change licensing requirements and make it easier for vets to practice when they cross state lines, then more vets might just be able to, if they live, close to a state border, or they're traveling for vacation, or what have you. But if we ease up and make it easier for vets to perform spay and neuter, then hopefully, I'm sorry, pardon me, I need to cough. But if we make it easier for vets to practice without all of the headaches and the costs that go in with getting licensed in another state, then they would be more willing to travel and do those spay neuter services. And then, of course, student loans. That's another conversation I know has come up in a presentation or two before mine. But providing benefits for recent graduates that include student loan repayment. And so I want to give a shout out to Ohio, who recently adopted a state-based program to provide some student debt assistance for veterinarians. That link is there in the slides for you to go learn more about that. But there are examples of that. And again, if you want to learn or hear more about the task force work specifically in legislation, I encourage you to attend our session later today. All right, and so to round things out, I do want to just bring it back to our state leaders. We have our directory, which includes our spay neuter lists, checkbox 1, but that second checkbox of the state leaders and what that means. And so again, if you were able to listen to this morning's session, then you heard a little bit about it. And hopefully what you heard is that this network we are bringing together folks who are involved in spay neuter and are able to promote spay and neuter services and have those important conversations with folks. But really, these are organizations who do so much more, and that spay neuter conversation dovetails with so many other important things that are happening in the animal welfare space. And so what do our state leaders do for us, or like what is their function? So with the public, our state leaders are there to help more people get the help they need. Like I was saying, we provide that DIY level of service for folks to hop on our website and input their zip code and see what's around them. But then if they need that second layer, the public can reach out to our state leaders who are there to offer referrals to local resources. Maybe they have a local knowledge of the maybe politics or whatever is going on in the area that might impact those spay neuter services, and they're going to help that person overcome whatever challenges so that their pet gets the help that they need. Meanwhile, with United Spay Alliance, so we have that public, they're answering the questions to the public, but internally they are representing their state, they're engaging with United Spay Alliance, and they're networking with other leaders. And that networking and idea sharing, I cannot emphasize enough how important that is and how the benefits we've seen come out of those networking conversations. United Spay Alliance does host a quarterly call for our state leaders to come together and share ideas and have those conversations, to say, here's a big thing that I think we need to be talking about, and then we all, share on those big things, provide support. Like I said, we've had conversations about no-show policies where we've been able to share ideas amongst each other, and it's a great way to connect with other people who are doing this work, because too often we can feel like we're in our own little vacuum of space where we're, maybe it's us. If we're lucky, we have maybe a handful of folks around us doing similar work, but it can feel lonely, right? You can feel isolated, and we're working to create a network where you can feel empowered, where you can feel that support. And you can get support from United Spay Alliance. I'm always here to support our state leaders with whatever it might be. We do provide some grant, like prospecting. I do some research. We have access to a database where I can go in and research what grant opportunities are available, and that's everything from like the nationwide, like the bigs that you would normally think of, things like Petco, PetSmart, of course, pop up. But then it's also really, our database is really good at finding local opportunities. So some like a foundation or something that might be at a local bank kind of a thing that is only applicable to a specific county or, you know, for a specific region of the state. So it does both. And so I can help you find the big grants and the little grants. And then I just send you a list and then you decide what works for you, what information might be good to share, that sort of thing. And then, of course, you get access to all of our online events, including this conference. But we're just generally there to support our leaders with whatever they need. We want to help. We are creating this network. We're all in this work together, and very much want to make sure that we are all successful, because at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure more pets get spayed and neutered, right? And that's promoting that is really what we're all about. And however we need to get there, we're going to do it. So just to finish things up, I'll stop yapping here in a moment, but if you think you know someone who would be a good fit for us in any of the states on your screen, from Idaho, Maryland, Maine, Michigan, North Dakota, Nebraska, and South Dakota, those are I got my sights on those states because we need to flip those states green. So we are actively looking for help. Now we do have a vetting process when, you know, folks are referred to us, because we want to make sure it's a good fit for them, that it's a good fit for us, and that everyone's going to have, you know, a really good time working together. So we do have a vetting process, but if you want to email any nominations to me, you can see my email there on your screen. And so we're always happy to connect with folks to learn more about the groups that are out there doing this important work. And then I think that's that. I want to say thank you to everybody.
It's lovely, lovely. And of course, you know me, I love the Go Green campaign. So
I know. Love that map.
I love that map. I'm carrying it with me wherever I go. You know, it's just a reminder of what's important to us. And you know, we were hoping to be Go Green by the end of this year. So and we've had great support from NACA. It's actually really supported us in helping to find some statewide leaders. So, you know, even if there's associations that you know that you might want to reach out to, that would be really great. A couple questions before we close out for lunch. Oh, someone is asking, she noticed that Georgia was yellow, but not listed as needing a state leader. Would you like to explain that, Bree?
Yeah, let's go back, take a look, remind myself. I think we have prospects in some states. So we have some folks who we are just courting, but they haven't officially signed on the dotted line. We do have an agreement that we ask folks to sign, where we kind of formalize the relationship between United Spay Alliance and the state leader. And so we are kind of in talks with some of the people or some of the states on this map who are yellow. And so we do have some good leads, I would say, but there's nothing official.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, you may need to hop over to the website. Can anyone make a suggestion to add a clinic to the map, or is permission needed from the organization?
I would say if you know of a clinic and it's missing from our map, you can go ahead and let us know. One of the things that we do try to do when we are adding clinics is that we verify their information. So we will also our volunteers do the research to go to their websites and reach out via email, phone, make sure that those numbers are correct and everything. And so verification is part of the process, but I think in general, no clinic would mind having their information out there.
Right. I think we usually do, or about two proofs of life, basically, for an organization. You know, a Facebook page, and a website, or an active phone number, or an active email. We try to acknowledge like that there's two, or a schedule that's not from 2018, something like that. So just trying to make sure that the website is current. And before we will actively post it. So we do have a bit of a manual process that goes out there to just make sure that it's not stale content that's out there. This is a sort of a bigger question, which I've thought about this too when we were talking about the access to care map and how it might not necessarily be fully accurate about the situation. So this person is asking, if you had to rate each state as best and worst when it comes to access to spay neuter, which would those states be, the best or the worst? So I'm thinking of like the USA Today listing of best and worst states, and I will go on the record and say I don't think we're there yet with that kind of information. But with chat GPT or chatbots or AI or whatever, maybe that is something that we can do down the road with, developing parameters and creating a best list. But, again, as a guidepost, I think we know these states personally too. And we appreciate everybody's doing the best that they can with the challenges that they have, and every state has different challenges too. So I do hedge a little bit on the best and the worst lists too, because they never provide the full story. But Bree, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I tend to agree. Like, I don't know that we could make that determination today. Like, I'm just not as familiar with things going on in every neck of the woods. But one of the good things about like our current version of the directory, where we have this searchable map, is that we now have all of these pinpoints that we can look at, and we can actually see where things are and where the gaps are. And I can see us at some point, if I know Stacy, we're going to layer that information with things like what the income is, or the census data, the income, and we can layer that geographically. So is it that there's nothing there because that's just a big swath of farmland and there's no people there, or is it there's a bunch of people there and there just aren't resources either? And so this has been a process to get to the point where we have this spreadsheet of information that we can plop onto a map. And so in the future, I can see using that data to overlay with some other things that we can think of that would contribute to this conversation.